I know we hadn't done it like this last year, and I'm really excited, I think, with the new rules of council, with the liaisons to direct departments, that I hope that we can have a maybe more efficient way of early engagement on this next year. I think it'll be really nice. But I just want to remind council, it's in our optional charter, that this is in section 418, that the budget shall be, so it's presented to us in November, and then after that, the budget shall be in such form required. Council may reduce any item or items in the mayor's budget by a vote of a majority of the council, but an increase of any item or items therein shall become effective only on an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members of council. And then it goes on to explain how we'll then pass the ordinance. So I just want to remind everyone that that's the expectations on it, that if there's anything you would like to see cut, you'll need to have 4 votes. If there's anything you'd like to see increase, you need 5 votes.
Point of order.
Sure.
Will then, after we do this work, will whatever we've done be able to be vetoed when it goes back upstairs?
No, that's,
He's on the DL.
You guys don't know what happened?
that's a different body. We don't have to pay attention to that.
Different rules.
I know there are different rules.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry.
I'm
sorry.
asking
I heard all
if they
about
apply
that.
because they,
All right, let Lori take roll here for minutes.
Roll call of the budget session of 12/19/2023. Mr. Nelson, President Nelson, council members Brzezinski, Faulkner, Flores, Hughes, Troop, and Witherspoon.
Here.
All right, so I want to start the, in preparation for this meeting, the mayor had offered proposed changes. Some of those, nothing, there were some conversations after various meetings. Some of these were suggested to us in the process of the study sessions. There was reimbursements and grants that, CBDG reimbursements that we were told were missing. So this is an update on all of those. I think that, during our study sessions, we made comments about a couple things. The finance director's salary, we made a comment about that. We made some comments about police overtime. So there's a whole list of things here that come out to a net change of $655,000, which I think is more than what the newspaper got me quoted at. So I'm pretty excited about this. I really appreciate the work to tighten up this and to make some of the shifts that were missed earlier in the process. Has everyone had a chance? This was emailed to us. I think we've had 3 iterations of this spreadsheet emailed or handed to us in the last week. Has everyone had a chance to check it over to see the $655,000 difference that the mayor suggested that we change?
Is there anything real in the cut?
yeah, so,
Yeah, I think so.
Tell me what.
$280,000 from police overtime, which is one of the spots that I thought was a bit egregious during the study session. The rest of it are mostly changes to grants that were not calculated into it.
The police has already raised $500,000.
Yeah, instead of 500, it's only going to be 200.
In reality, the police are coming in around $1,750,000 this year, based on our numbers right now. So it's not really increasing by
It's confusing because
$500,000.
they talked about the $750,000 that we got back.
That is in the $1.5 million that was already in the overtime.
No, I'm not gonna hurt the police, I'm just trying to get to the bottom line.
In this budget is $1.5 million of overtime, and in that number is $750,000 worth of grant money. So if we hadn't gotten those grants, it would have been $2.2 million in overtime.
You had a question?
oh, well, just let them talk for a minute.
All right.
Yeah, I did have a question though. With the additions down on the second half, so are we we know they're gonna be covered by a grant, but why are we putting them in the budget if they're gonna be covered by grants? Or
These particular
are they
grants,
reimbursable grants?
right, these particular grants will be used to reimburse expenses. So we put both the expenses and the reimbursement in the budget.
And okay, we're an FTE for a third code enforcement inspector. That's a general fund item.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
That's pretty much a
Okay.
necessity, isn't it?
They asked for 2 more, now they're asking for a third one. That's,
So this is the third above the additional two that we already added?
correct. That we are voting to add tomorrow. So all of these things are to be discussed and voted on today.
Okay, and the coordinator of city services under parks, could someone explain to me exactly what that person would do?
So that person is designed to work with Dave Rocco for the next year or so until he retires, so that there's some succession planning built in, and then that person will take over when Dave retires. He's getting near the end of his time, and we want to make sure that there's time for transition.
Okay,
Is that- Does that make sense?
So are we hiring from the outside for this position?
We'll advertise it and see if there's interest. It's not a union position.
Anybody from within the city can also apply for it.
Mhm.
Okay, because if, well, theoretically speaking, if we promote it within, they probably could shadow or do some type of on-the-job training if we were gonna hire from within.
If we do that, we'll have to backfill the position that they're in now, though.
Correct.
So,
Right.
might be a little
Correct.
less,
So-
might be.
But I'm saying that position is still there with the line item, so it's not like we're backfilling it.
We brought Jackie in case you wanted to talk about that
Yeah.
code
I can
enforcement.
speak to, am I on here?
Mhm.
I can speak to the third property maintenance inspector. As during our budget session, I displayed some slides that showed that we were severely understaffed. In comparison to other cities our size in Pennsylvania, we have half the staff needed to run an efficient and progressive code enforcement office. Our department has no administrative or support staff dedicated to only the inspectors. Most cities our size have at least 3 administrative staff to process paperwork. Our inspectors do all of this on top of being out in the field most of the time. The city has only permitted 1 electrical, plumbing, and building inspector for the entire city of Erie, and that includes residential and commercial properties. There is no backup, and in taking personnel time proves to be very difficult for these staff members. Upon returning from vacation or sick time, they are backlogged with inspections, emails, and paperwork. Without strengthening the capacity of this department, we'll never really fully combat blight, target unregistered rentals, among several other needs. Without increasing staffing and code enforcement, the city will experience further restraint on our tax base and population will continue to decline. So the third inspector, and
Objection.
the third inspector, just to
Yeah,
go a little
but,
further with the third inspector, this employee would have additional, they're a little different than the other 2. This employee would have additional certifications to back up the electrical, plumbing, and building inspectors and reduce our expense with BIU, the company that we use currently for backup inspections. This employee will reduce property maintenance inspector districts, which will allow the city to strengthen the relationship with the community become more proactive than reactive, and improve compliance with city ordinances such as quality of life, rental registration, group homes, and childcare. So it's a little bit different than the other two that we're
question.
proposing.
Question, are you telling me we can get somebody who's a certified electrician, a certified plumber, and a certified builder for $63,000?
No, much less.
We,
None. Our regular electricians make more than
That
that.
includes the
Yeah,
benefits,
that's
so
just
the
salary.
job's in at 40,000 and change, 40,300.
correct.
So,
Are you asking
so
me
what I'm
that?
saying, in the city of Erie, we would need a certified electrician to back up our electrician. We would need a certified plumber to back up our plumber. And if this person is not in fact a certified electrician or a certified plumber or one of these other trades, they're not going to be able to do the role as you explained it.
Right. Well, that's what we're asking for, to have, they would have additional certifications. So they would in fact be able to do those types of inspections.
So do you know how long it takes to become a certified plumber or a certified electrician?
Andy, do you want to speak to this at all? Because we've already had some discussions internally regarding the makeup of this position, so I feel like Andy could speak better to that.
Yeah, I've talked to, so we've got a few really good candidates that are asking about the position. One works for a company locally that has certifications, commercial certifications, which is extremely good. The other one is a union electrician, and he's finishing up his apprenticeship, and he works very close with Sam, our electrical inspector, and is extremely confident that this gentleman can pass anything on the electrical side. So that's going to give us two. Plus our other property maintenance inspectors, they have been studying. I got two of them that are going to be ready to take the residential building. And so we've been proactively pushing the inspectors to move that way to get more certification. For a long time, many years, I've wanted for many years, I've wanted to do that with the property maintenance inspectors, where they had their residential certifications. And when they,
Take your mask off.
so when they, I'm getting over COVID and pneumonia. So when they're in their area working, that they can do the building inspections, they can do the property maintenance inspections. They're already doing the rooming house and so forth. So I'm fairly confident with the crew that we have with those certifications. But the two gentlemen that we have talked to, one actually lives right over here on 7th Street. He's phenomenal. I've got nothing but high compliments.
So the questions were, they're certified electricians or plumbers?
One of them is,
Okay.
and he works for an agency that we already use. But he's looking to move away from that company. I don't want to say any more.
No, okay, no, I don't want you to.
I'll say
out
something.
who he
I'll
is.
say
I was just
something
saying
more.
That,
Yes,
at
no,
this salary, I don't know if I'd walk away from a $50 an hour job to take a job that pays 15. I just don't know no one who does that.
Well, that's at 70% of the salary.
Yeah.
That,
So-
it's not actually.
That number that you're scoffing at is
Yeah.
with benefits. The salary for that position
Yeah,
is
so
30.
that's what, so,
Contractually, we have to
okay.
hire AFSCME personnel at 70, if we hire them from the outside, at 70% of the salaries that
of
are
the
current
straight rate.
employees.
Okay.
And then after a year, they go up to 80%. After the third year, they go to 90, and at
so
4
what's
years,
the ASME rate for an electrician now? Or actually for an inspector, you have to be.
$37,619.40 is what these are budgeted at. 100% after 3 years is $53,744.60.
If I may,
I'm amazed we can get an electrician.
I think
for
the
that.
whole world knows that,
I'm-
you done, Michael? I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
as far as cutting the budget, I'm there. These are not the people who gotta cut. If you ever call anybody in this whole darn city to get something done, that guy behind Lisa gets it done with a skeleton staff. They go into buildings without guns, which is something I fought for too, never knowing what the hell's behind the door. And we're talking chump change. We got 3 people running something that Frank ran by himself. How long ago? I'm not gonna, it's Christmas time, so I'm not gonna cut people that are working, but I should. These guys don't deserve to be cut. They need to be added on to because they're doing one heck of a job.
So correct, we've
Done.
added 2 persons in the budget. We've added 2 people in the budget.
No, it's been in the budget, right?
2's been in the budget.
No,
A third
we
one is
added
being
2
suggested
people
now.
in the budget.
Okay.
I do, on an increase side, I do have concerns about that 30% discount on these guys. That is a really, that's got to be challenging finding qualified people, especially, and we've got a list of them. I asked for a list of them. They got 2 in public works, 1 in finance, 1 in payroll, 1 in DECD, 1 in engineering, and 2 in police that are all working at that 20 to 30%. That's at a total savings of $124,000 with current staff people, and another 48 with the oncoming people. And I understand some of the people that have been hired, you've had trouble finding people that can pass certain tests, get certain certifications.
I have.
It's, as Lisa said, it's contractual. It's in the AFSCME contract, but it is something that we're gonna be revisiting in the new year, especially post-COVID. When you can go and get hired at Walmart or Target or Taco Bell for $15 to $18 an hour, times have changed.
Yeah.
So we're gonna be looking at it.
Do we need to, so I asked what the total number was that people are being, and I'll say the word loosely, I hesitate to use this word when we're talking about budgets, but underpaid. I say that with some caution. To reverse that policy would be about $164,000. Is that something you expect to be able to reverse that policy in the next year, or take a look at and talk to AFSCME about it a little bit more?
We'll just have to talk to everybody and see, I don't have an answer right now.
Okay. Do we need to budget for you to be able to hire people at a reasonable rate, or retain some of these people that are working at a 30 or 20% discount?
Yeah. I would say yes. I mean, we're
So,
handcuffed if we can.
We're talking reality. What's our budget look like without ARP money? Will anybody be honest with me and tell me 6 million?
Between
Huh?
the reimbursements and appropriated fund balances, I think we're at 7, right?
In the hole.
Yeah.
Just as long as the general public knows what we're up against. So we don't
right, so,
cut them by the ones that are doing the job out there either.
so we've added several employees and expanded several departments. So I'm of the same mind as President Nelson, and I know that you have a signed contract, but there's a process, but I think it's worth going to the process, to see if they want to open up, the contract for a negotiation, because I can't see us retaining people with that skill level at this price unless they're gonna work for us at night and work for someone else during the day, or try and we have a few situations.
Yeah. No, every time I'm at the convention center, I'm looking for all my favorite workers from from City Hall to see which ones are
Over there, yep,
working their second jobs.
literally.
And so, in the turn of events, I'm actually for more money if the person has an electrical certification and or a plumbing certification. The building inspecting is a lot lower hanging fruit. It's a lot less that it's a demanding course and takes less time to get that type of certification.
Now, council doesn't negotiate contracts with AFSCME, so, you know, I imagine there was trade-offs on this. Is this something where it would be a challenging precedent if we put it to a vote about this 20-30% stuff? Would that mess up contract stuff on the execution side of it, the executive branch side of it?
If you guys
Is Ed
voted on
Betza
it,
here?
Yeah,
Ed is on. I mean, it's probably better if we just handle it administratively, but.
but you need the budget allocations to be able to do that well.
So the union and management would have to agree to open up the contract in order to add anything or take anything away.
I'm sure the union would be welcoming to that, I would presume. Mr.
Still talking
Betza,
about that one job with
well, there's like 9 of them
9 jobs for Andy?
total in the whole budget.
No, I'm talking about one for the important one, anyway.
3 for him. There's 3 on that case, and then there's a couple other in Lisa's office and such. Mr. Betza. Do you happen to, yeah, he might not be,
Nobody invited him.
he's on, he's
Is
zoomed.
he there?
Yeah.
Okay.
He might be in.
You're muted.
All right. All right. I'd asked for a list of them, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are a total of 11 people that are currently on discounted rates in AFSCME. Does that sound right? I actually didn't get the list from you.
I believe so, yeah. Sense.
So that's 2 from Public Works, 1 from Finance, 1 from Payroll, 1 from Department of Economic Development, 1 from Engineering, 2 from Police, and then there would be 3 from Planning we're looking at. Oh, you know what? Hey, does anyone else have any questions about proposed changes before I start moving on?
Well, you're looking at changes. Can anybody explain to me if we're taking a lot of glass out of the garbage pickup, why is our tonnage still going up? I mean, there's a lot of glass being diverted, and yet they're telling us that,
Tech people, Ed cannot unmute.
pardon me?
Ed Betza cannot unmute.
No. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I just a question I have, because I know that my wife makes me take the darn glass down to the place and drop it off, and there's places in Glenwood, there's places all around the city where people can drop the glass, and glass is heavy, by the way, in case anybody didn't notice. So something's fishy if we're not coming down with our tonnage.
You looked at the tipping
Yeah.
numbers yet?
Was on.
Yeah, I did. Now, I looked at, we looked at the refuse volume from this year, which I wouldn't expect it to change from this year to next year because this glass collection has been going on for the entire year. It's been going on for a little bit longer than that, right? So we're using last year's numbers, but the tipping fee went up. We just ended a 4-year contract, and the tipping fee went up. So I double checked. I went through line by line on that refuse budget with Chuck Zisk, and we rechecked the tipping fee, and I'm confident in that number. The only costs that went up significantly in the refuse department were the tipping fee and the labor, which is contractual. We kept everything else almost the same as last year. Oh, and the fuel, which we have no control over. So the only things that have increased in that budget are the things we have no control over. There is, in my mind, no way that we can avoid an increase because our costs have gone up every year. We've been through this inflationary period where in the last 3 years, I think the inflation rate on top, each year on top of the last was in the neighborhood of 16.5%. And we've increased our rates by much smaller than that.
That's why I'm so concerned about the poor families. You know, they lose almost $9,000 of affordability. The same dollar pays that much less this year, and we're not paying attention to them. That's-
Well, the only way we can actually decrease their refuse rate is to provide less service, because we have to cut our expenses in order to decrease the rate. And the only way to cut our expenses, as I just explained to you, there's nothing that's within our control that we can cut unless we take the large item pickup away, or
So I think
cut
last time we talked
cut
about
the number of containers
Is it
that
a
we're
bad
picking up.
keyword?
maybe doing,
Privatize?
so once we get our containers out, our recyclable containers, I think most households can hold on to them for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You know, the city's providing large.
Yeah.
Most people don't have that many recyclables in a week. And so I think that, you know, bi-weekly, recycling is something that can be looked at.
If you're thinking about privatization, you need to look at the communities around us that have used private haulers and what their rates are, and I think we have that in our council
We have a
handbook.
city which
Do
makes
you
it
want
a
to
lot
bring
more
that up,
difficult
Tori,
to
if you
pick
can
up.
find that?
Oh,
And as
I'm not
long
against
as
them. I got through college on the back of a garbage truck here in the city. So I know
As
what it's all
long as
about.
we're not, as long as the city is in the black, it's not going to change their rate.
We're in a black because we keep on raising the fees,
Right,
which is
but
what the people are upset about in the first place.
there's
Not your
no,
fault, Lisa, you know.
it's not,
So
it's
how
not
much of a
hurting the
savings
residents for us to keep this.
would- And estimated if
pardon
we
me?
did every other week recycling pickup.
Well, that's something that we would have to sit down and estimate, yeah. I mean, that would take a little bit
That
of,
sounds like something we'd
That
have
would-
to do next, you know, it sounds like that, it sounds like that's a decision that'd be tough to make for tonight.
yeah, I mean, that
Because-
might involve
because
the
we're
different
giving out-
types of trucks and,
Because we're giving out containers that, you know, 60 gallons or whatever, you know, that hopefully nobody's filling that up in a week.
We're going to be, we got a grant.
Yes, so we're giving out recyclable
So
containers
we-
that are considerable size.
All right, so we're in the low end.
by the way, Ed, I worked for 10 years for one of the waste haulers that does private
Yeah.
contracts.
Mr.
So I
Perfetto
know a
was a
little
very
bit.
good man for me.
Huh?
I worked hard, but
So
definitely.
just to keep things moving along on vote stuff, does anyone have any questions about the proposed changes that the administration gave us? I would love to just vote this up, or, you know, if we can exhaust the questions and then just vote. Does anyone have any further questions about this? Is there anything that needs separated?
Can we
All right.
vote on this today?
Because, yeah. These are amendments we're voting on before
Okay.
tomorrow's ordinance. So,
Let's get a clarification though with Andy. All 3 jobs are back in the pot for him, for the home
This
inspection.
includes all
this would
three.
be all 3, and we can work on that in a second vote. We can vote on the first and second ones if that's the case.
The first two we added in the preliminary budget,
Right.
and the third one's on
This one.
here.
All right.
Is the police
So-
involved, in police in that?
There is police. There's a reduction of 280,000 to their overtime, which the police chief said, he emailed us today. He said he understood that and he would ask us not to go any further than 280, but it does seem that that's an agreeable position for him.
Okay, what about fire?
There's nothing
For fire.
for fire. An adjustment for deferred comp for 38,000. That's it. And that's an increase.
Any positions cut again?
Well,
Nothing in this involves cutting positions. There are some addition positions by grants. It was in this as a proposal by the mayor's office, and then he emailed us today with all of his stats, and he added that little paragraph at the end and said, that he thought that was a reasonable spot.
When we put the budget together, we had 1.5 million in overtime, and if we extrapolated that from October 30th to December and added a 3% increase, we came up to $2 million. Now,
Didn't
just.
include some of the reimbursements is what we figured out in that study.
Well, the reimbursements were embedded in the 1.5 million, so that wasn't exactly what happened, but you've got timing differences, and look, we have more data now, and we recalculated it recently and determined that we can make like 1,750,000 this year, or 760, possibly. So if you cut it to 1.7 million, we're going to have to do some belt tightening because there's no 3% increase in there. And we're a little bit shy of what we did this year, but they're going to work on it.
All right. Mel, are you satisfied with that answer?
Yes.
All right. Is there any other questions about this? And it looks like Betts is available, so, but we can talk to him after this portion, because
Well,
this doesn't have to ask
actually
me.
did have a question. Okay, so, and I understand it's grant funding primarily, but we have the 500,000 for the PAL grant. Is this contractual that they get paid their overtime rate while they're serving as a PAL?
The people that this grant is paying for are full-time PAL. They're full-time on PAL.
Yep.
And we had them in the budget already, and their wages were already in the budget. They're existing police officers, so we're just getting this revenue to cover them.
Okay, you said, I know we had one full-time officer in PAL, right? We have more?
We applied for a grant to cover the cost of 2 people this coming year, to work full-time in PAL. We're not backfilling those positions, so it's gonna cover the 2 existing officers in the budget, which is why it wasn't initially in here, because we didn't have confirmation that we were gonna get the grant until we received it. So that's gonna cover their salaries, not overtime.
That's exciting.
Okay.
And then it'll allow us to hire a civilian coordinator at at a part-time salary, just to help with paperwork and that kind of thing, so that we don't have police officers doing paperwork. Yeah, they can
Okay.
just spend time with the
We
kids
have
in the
made no
program.
decisions as far as where we're gonna put Pell yet? I mean,
Not
it's-
yet, no.
not yet.
They
Do
have
we
at
need
least
to
3 or 4
move to
places.
accept
What's that?
Been offered.
Do you need a motion to accept?
All right, so, yeah, we'll need a motion to accept it. Because there's increases and decreases, we would need 5 votes for the increases, but I think we can just vote on this all together. All right, so would you
So
like to make,
moved.
all right, second?
Second.
Anyone in favor? Everyone in favor?
Separation, let's do additions and then let's do subtractions.
Okay, all right. Is everybody,
Which one you want first? Subtraction.
okay, so in the top, that's all the, some of those are tied together, though. A lot of the additions are decreases on the other side. You know what I mean? So if you want to vote, if you want to separate,
That's okay, we could
okay.
take them.
I feel confident we got 5 votes on this, if anyone wants to vote against. All right,
So, hey, before we vote on this, I have a question for Lisa. Could you tell us how many full-time employees we have that are being paid solely by ARP money, minus the police?
6? You've seen this before.
Lisa, you don't know that by heart?
Actually, I don't. Can you pull up that budget
Yeah, they're almost there.
council document?
It's the page that has the people's names in there, that they didn't put the positions, they put the names. Oh, they fixed that part.
Okay,
never mind.
non-police there at the bottom.
6.
Yes.
No, they're not completely funded by ARP. There's percentages.
More than 60%, let's go with that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
So, I may or may not be here next year, but the question would be that, okay, you know, we have 6 people who are being paid for solely with ARP. We're adding additional head count, and that's gonna impact our true, what they call it, our structural
Bottom line.
deficit. So,
I want to clarify a little something. Some of those employees were existing employees who took on additional responsibilities to administer ARP funding or to, you know, take over grant administration. Lisa and Jackie both were doing ARP work. Victoria's doing ARP work. But Victoria, for instance, Victoria Lewick, not Victoria.
other Victoria.
Other
I thought they were the same person.
New Victoria.
Victoria too.
Replaced Jennifer Hoffman. So while she's partially being paid by ARP funding to administer that, she was already a city employee doing economic development work.
So it helped our bottom line for a
So
season.
it's helping our bottom line. We're using it sort of as a revenue replacement to compensate us for administering the ARP funding, but she wasn't hired with ARP funds to do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't
They
know.
move people around.
I mean,
Yeah.
and if you look at the job descriptions of all these people, they're all working with grants and trying to bring, and economic development, trying
A
to
lot
bring
of
more
extra.
jobs and money into Erie.
Absolutely.
All right. I would love to move these $655,000 in revenue adjustments. And we already had a motion and a second. Can we vote on that? All right, Lori, do you want to call those out?
Sure, sponsored by Councilmember Witherspoon, seconded by Councilmember Brzezinski, that city council vote on the proposed changes to the preliminary budget made by the administration as amended. Mr. Brzezinski?
Yes.
Councilmember Faulkner?
Yes.
Flores?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
Troop?
Yes.
Witherspoon?
Yes.
President Nelson?
Yes. All right.
Motion passes, yeas 7, nays 0.
Mr. Betza, maybe you can speak to the issues of the 30% reduction. I know we do this for police and fire as well, but I feel like that's not been to the detriment of hiring the positions as much. Maybe you can speak to the AFSCME contracts and this, the 30% reduction that they start with, and what that would do if we address it here in this budget?
So every contract has a wage progression. Some of them are different. To the extent that we feel that a wage progression is problematic for us, we certainly have the ability to meet with the union to discuss possibly changing that. But that would be an executive function from your position. I think you accurately point out this is also a funding issue if we were to do it. I don't have any objection if you were to anticipate increasing funding. It doesn't change the contract, but it would at least allow the parties to have a discussion to change the contract.
Okay, thank you. From the information I have, that's a $168,000 increase. Now, obviously, with them having a contract, or $163,000 increase, with them having a contract, that would be that'd be up to the administration to try to figure out where the 30% reduction is necessary or where you'd want to boost that up to retain them. But I'd like to give you guys enough money to be able to do that.
Right.
I think that's, especially when I'm looking at these code enforcement officers coming in at, I mean, even before this stuff inflation, I made that money bartending 20 hours a week. I mean, and that was 10 years ago. I think to be competitive, this is gonna be challenging. So I'm going to make a motion. It ends up being $163,939,088 is the numbers I have to work off of. Does that sound accurate, Lisa? Because I still,
Should be 92
Could you read
cents.
off
Yeah.
what departments the people were in again?
yeah. This is, Public Works has 2, they're both maintenance mechanics. Finance has a senior clerk and accountant. Payroll has a payroll clerk. DECD has an executive secretary. Engineering has a CAD tech. Police have 2 CSOs.
What are
Plant-
those?
I don't know.
CSOs? They're the call takers.
They what?
They take
take
the
the
non-emergency calls.
Oh, okay.
And then planning has 3 code enforcement officers. Now, this is not me making a motion to give all these people raises instantly, but in the cases where you guys are seeing that 30% reduction and struggling with AFSCME retention, and I at least want you guys to have the allocations to address it. Does anyone have any questions about what I'm proposing here?
Could you give that full amount again, please?
The amount that I have that would bring all of these 70% up numbers, and I just have the salaries, would that affect their deferred comp and?
If they're on the deferred comp and the FICA.
All right, so will you be able to tighten that up by morning, you know, in the morning
Yeah.
on that? Okay. So this should come out to south of 200,000, 163,939, I'm sorry, $163,939.88 is just the wages. So it doesn't affect their deferred comp, and that'd be it. Oh, and FICA.
10%.
Yeah.
If you add the total amount.
And this is not giving them an instant raise, it's just giving the administration enough resources. This is an increase, so it would take a supermajority. So we'll see if it happens. I'll make that motion. Does anyone want to second me on this?
I'll second.
Call for the vote.
Motion by President Nelson, seconded by Councilmember Flores, that $200,000, including $163,939.88 in wages, increase to the general fund budget.
Yeah. Operating budget. Yeah.
Mr. Brzezinski,
Yes.
Ms. Faulkner,
Yes.
Councilmember Flores,
Yes.
Keys,
Yes.
True,
Yes.
Witherspoon,
Yes.
and President Nelson.
Yes.
All right, who's got 200?
Yeas 7-0.
Well, they just gave us 655 in cuts. So.
So now we're back to that 500, Chuck, that was in the paper.
Yeah, exactly. Less. We're at less than that. I got some ideas.
Lisa will have adjusted
Yes.
new ordinance for us.
Yeah, now the budget's kind of a fickle thing. It might not be exactly matching these numbers. It might not.
Yep.
It might, I need a little bit of wiggle room,
The
but
motion
it'll
had
be,
up to 200,000 on
Yeah.
that, so that should be.
right,
plenty
that
of
should
cushion.
give me what I need, so.
Yep.
I thought you were massaging either the garbage or the refuse. Nothing? Sir?
Let's keep working on the general budget before we get to the enterprise funds. All right. Do we have other general budget suggestions or concerns?
For general fund?
Yeah.
Is
Yes.
that the money we're giving to the county for the people that were supposed to be helped in the city? Is that 2 million, Michael? What was that?
5 million.
The redevelopment authority you're talking about. The redevelopment authority?
You know, the money, that's our money for our people, and we're gonna give it to them so they can play around on 12th and Cherry again?
I don't believe that's in this budget.
It's not at all?
It's not.
That's
it's not
ARP
the
money.
budget. It's ARP funding that we awarded to the
Money.
redevelopment authority.
But
That
didn't
money
we
is already
award
left.
them that money for a specific purpose
We do
in the city?
To help our people.
Did you ever?
You
oh,
talking
were
about
off that
The
day.
Quinty
It's
and the
about
EMI.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We have
The money for
contract.
housing ended up being lent to,
Oh, you're talking
for
about,
the 2-year loan on a,
that's just a loan.
yep.
Yeah. It's actually a really good deal because it enables Chris to move forward more quickly on EMI and create jobs in that location. And then he'll be paying that money back to the redevelopment authority with interest, but it's interest at a lower rate than he would have to pay to float a bond or take out a loan. So it's good for the city's redevelopment authority and it's good for the county's redevelopment authority. It's good for the city and the residents.
But does that not defer the access to home repair funds for another 2 years?
No, because they still have enough funding that they're loaning out and granting out, and they can't move that fast to get it all out the door at the same time. So it's a good way for them to phase it in and get the money spent in the amount of time that it needs to be spent in and then get it back with interest.
It wasn't, but this is great.
Given that
I
that's
was
not
looking forward
particular
to-
to this budget,
Right.
We entered into a
Tomorrow
program
item.
with the redevelopment authority, which has the programming rules, which include that if they were not gonna do as asked, that the city would have the right to ask them to return the money. Or if they wanted to program it some other way, I guess they could come back to the city and ask if it was gonna be outside of the contract. I think that even though they're an autonomous authority, that if they change their mind or they're unable to execute, they should be coming back to city council and saying, hey, you know, we will now like to do this, or this with the money, and council should approve or disapprove the changes.
Yeah, they're still gonna do what they said they were gonna do initially. This is just a temporary loan.
I know we keep hearing that we can't get rid of the funds fast enough. Have we looked into offering technical support so that the residents of the city can have some type of assistance, walking them through the application, showing them what kind of paperwork that they might need to go along with these applications? Because I've spoken to people that say that they go through, they get the paperwork, and then once they start flipping through the pages,
It's a lot.
they feel like they don't have the capacity to accomplish
Yes,
it.
yes.
And then we have the end of the year and we're recycling the funds again, and it's not actually getting to the community.
Yeah.
So are we
So
looking into that?
we are,
technical support?
yes, our Love Your Block staffers have been working to help folks that they've met through the Love
Okay.
Your Block program that needed more work than we could provide through the Love Your Block program. But also the community liaison and the New American liaison, when we bring them on, the plan is to make them much more community outreach so that they're going out, knocking on doors, helping people complete those applications, because they are, and you need to submit a lot of information. And sometimes that's really difficult to navigate. And there are a lot of people, I mean, what we found out through Love Your Block was people didn't even know we had the funding available to apply for in the first place. So it's really important that we're knocking on doors, we're dropping off the information, and then helping people access the resources. It really
We
is
find out how
vital.
many people we actually did help.
I don't have that number
stonewalled
off
with
the top of
I
my
know you
head.
don't have
Yeah,
it.
I can find out how
Somebody
far
should find
along
out
we
for
are.
us. That's what it's all
And
about, helping out
Yeah.
people.
We also allocated $250,000 for the East and West Bay Front to hire somebody to do exactly what Jasmine
Yeah.
has said. And if it's not being done,
It's being done, but it's being done in those two neighborhoods. So, you know, we have,
Farther reach.
you know, a whole city that needs that support too.
absolutely. So were they successful in those two neighborhoods?
Yes,
That
I
was
know
my
that
question.
they have been helping their residents access funding.
Well, can you give us an update on how many people we've been able
Sure.
to help this year?
Yeah.
I mean, it would be nice just to have a reference. That way, hopefully next year we can aim for double it. You know, have an incentive to work towards getting
Get
the
over
funds to the
City Hall
community.
up a couple nights a
And
week.
so the one
Coming
thing
in
is,
for
we
information.
want
Yeah, have like a workshop and just do.
the
Yeah,
funds to be
we talked about that
available.
too.
We know the need is available, and I don't believe it's a prudent way to do it, to loan it to somebody and then say it's gonna trickle back into our community when some of us were on that panel or not, and some of us were not. But, you know, we outlined what we wanted the money to go to, and we stand behind those causes. You know, if our primary problem is blight, our primary focus should be, how do we get this money to the people? How do we get their house repaired?
Yeah.
How do we mitigate blight? How do we work with code enforcement and referrals? That's a whole system of referral right there. Every time they go out on a call, they can say, hey, I went to a call, we gave them a ticket, straight to the pot of money. There's no reason why these things are not working.
okay.
I had a crazy situation the other day too. I asked somebody in the forest, I won't mention names, what's going on in 12th and Green Garden? People are telling me that it looks like a war zone. Nothing's been done. You know what they told me? contact the people who bought it. Hello. We gave them a 30-year loan for whatever, at 1%, and they're doing nothing there?
I think they're
We need
planning.
a
They're
real-
it's in motion.
Yeah, we need a good, very slow motion, Rennie.
Well,
Well, that
deals
takes a
take
while.
time.
I'm
Bring in
willing to
jobs
bring them
and-
down here and hold their feet to the fire. Doggone right.
All right.
Oh, general fund?
Yeah.
Okay. I have two proposed cuts I'd like to explore and bring up to council. So page 22. I'm really excited about where things are going with Department of Planning and Neighborhood Resources. I think our director is doing a great job there. And I come at this really under the vantage point of having worked as a consultant, having had my own consulting business, and also working for a neighborhood organization that does a lot of housing work. I'm excited about the idea of a comprehensive housing strategy. I do not love the $100,000 ticket for that. So this is item 4041 for professional services.
22.
That's not in there.
Page 62.
I thought that was in the general fund.
No, it's in here.
Is it page 22?
You have a second on that one already, Suze.
So I have already been working with, for example, Mercyhurst University's public health department. They're engaging their students in doing a needs assessment. I would love to see this as a collaborative community effort instead of $100,000 going to an outside consultant. I know for myself, when I had my own consulting business in San Francisco, so much higher rates, I could have done that study in about 4 to 6 months' time with half that much money. And so I just don't want to see these dollars go to a Cleveland, Cincinnati, Pittsburgh-based consulting firm, Harrisburg-based consulting firm, when we already have robust neighborhood organizations, strong community centers, and great universities who could be partners in this effort. So it's truly a community housing plan.
Can I check one thing with this?
Yes.
Does she have the right page number? I had that, I had the same concern down, but
22 in the
I had
big
it
book.
on page 62 on line item 4041 with professional services under general government.
I believe it's in the, on
It's in
page
this book.
22, because if you look
is
at
page
the
22?
23 budget, it was 20,000, and the
Okay.
24 budget's
Sorry.
120,000.
All right,
So,
all right, sorry, thank you. I
Yeah.
Let's
just-
not
I wasn't
forget the
clear.
realtor board as a good comment too.
Right, like this could be an opportunity to
question.
bring people together to not outsource all of that when the dollars, like Michael has said, needs to be reinvested into the community, not into a consulting firm. So I would like to suggest cutting that by $50,000, challenging the department to do that comprehensive study with $50,000 through community partnerships instead of the allocated $100,000.
I'd also like to point out, when you're offering answers to that, the Planning Commission last month during Thanksgiving break, they went through, I think it was 5 resolutions that when you look at the house, because I read a bunch of housing plans just to see what those look like. The things that the Planning Commission suggested are basically like the first half of every housing plan I've seen. They're all talking about ADUs, they're talking about everything that the Planning Commission was talking,
Yes.
looked like came straight out of
Yes.
their most recent housing plans.
Yes, like our problems are not unique. I think the planning commission is already aware of what needs to happen. There's going to be some ordinances that I'm sure council, as we have addressed a lot of housing issues this year, will be addressing next year. But I can't stomach putting $100,000 into a consulting firm for that study.
So, council approves contracts. So, as you go into, I would leave the $100,000 in the budget, and I would, ask this council's plus the additional members to work on a comprehensive solution with local partners. Because it's still gonna cost something for somebody to do the work. If there's somebody capable of doing it,
We
or
did-
wanna do it in a collaboration, then I think that's the way to go. But I would
We did that diversion study last year for free with Penn State Barron regarding food, compost, and glass.
Then we'll put in a revenue replacement at the end of the year if we don't use it, right?
I would just comment, I'm not opposed to reducing it to the 50. We have been working with Infinite Erie and the delivery team on housing and are actually hoping that we'll find a match for that. We put in the 100 just in case. But we have all the neighborhood groups working together, the redevelopment authority, the housing authority, HANDS. Everybody is on the same page with the need to create a comprehensive housing strategy. And so I think we'll be able to make it happen. We put in the 100 just in case, but
Well,
I
I'll
just wanted to
second
throw that out.
50, if that's the number.
So it would be a reduction of line item 4041.
Rather than a position.
Right.
Yes. Yes, so it would be a reduction of line 4041 from 120,000 to 70,000.
Need a second.
I'll be your second.
See if I get this right. A motion by Councilmember Susanna Faulkner, seconded by Council President Chuck Nelson, that line 4041, the comprehensive housing strategy consultant amount from 120,000 to 70,000 be approved. A reduction.
So this only needs a simple majority.
But the reduction to specifically 50,000.
Yes, it's the full professional services line.
A reduction of 50,000.
Call for the vote then.
Yep.
Councilmember Brzezinski, Faulkner,
Yes.
Flores.
Yes.
Keys,
Yes.
Troop,
Yes.
Witherspoon,
Yes,
President Nelson.
Yes.
Mr. President,
Yes.
we have to keep in mind, because we put 100,000 or 1,000,000 in a line item, it doesn't mean that we contract with a company for that amount.
Yeah.
Because they may come in very close to that, and we can say no.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one additional suggestion for a cut. Page 29. Office of Personnel, HR. Specifically at the very bottom of the roster, casual labor. I have concern over that and the hiring of an intern. It was something that there wasn't necessarily concrete evidence of, as well as the fact that the HR assistant, the first role, the first position there was just brought on in 2023.
Yeah, replacing casual labor.
Replacing casual labor, so I propose a cut to 4011 salaries by $15,000, eliminating the casual labor.
I'll second that one.
And that was for,
In the Human Resources Department and their personnel, the last line item for casual labor, $15,000.
so what was the reason for the casual labor again?
That was in the budget 2 years ago. Then that was when Lainey was an intern, and then they hired her on full-time and got rid of casual labor. And now they're looking to bring it back on with casual labor, although Lainey's still here.
Well, I can give you a little bit of
Yeah.
context. What happened was an employee who's no longer with the city hired an intern before leaving, and without going through the process, the student showed up expecting a job. And so we created a job for that student. And then we paid for it out of the mayor's office because we had enough funding in our summer help, in our, whatever it's called, in our summer help, we had enough funding. So the person helped out in planning and in HR while she completed her internship. And then I think it was just, well, we'll keep it in the HR budget as opposed to taking it out of the mayor's budget. But I've talked to the HR director and she's fine with that being cut, so.
Okay.
What does the casual labor do? Is
It would
job
do-
Intern
description?
money.
It's just a part-time internship, preferably if you could find a student who's working in HR that could help with paperwork, basic tasks that would actually give them some experiential learning too as part of their education. But she's fine with it being cut.
So,
I would love to see
An intern.
that title out of there and internship
Yeah.
in there. When you tell me that,
And, yeah,
I know what is about
Right.
helping
Yes.
a student.
yeah.
I recall Eunice had mentioned that it would have been an individual who would have been spending time in HR and with the mayor's administration, correct?
I think it was
It was
planning.
planning.
Planning, oh, okay.
Doesn't mean you gotta get paid either.
so
And what
if-
she's gonna be looking into, she reached out to the universities about getting interns that would get credit as opposed to having to be paid. So that's another avenue that she's
So-
exploring.
All right. I'll
So
second
while
that.
I'm for,
Jasmine already seconded it.
definitely, I think if we could define this into an internship, that I could still support it.
Right.
I don't want us
Yeah,
taking Johnny off the street and running
Yeah.
him for half the year. And,
Nowadays.
yeah, so if we could define this as an internship.
It would look better on
That one
paper.
was a
yeah, I mean, that's what we call it. We call
I'm
it
for
casual
keeping this,
labor,
and
but it's
I
internship.
will also say that it'd also be great if, if we could really open our eyes up to make sure we get a diverse candidate, and that would make it even better.
Yeah, the candidate that we had was an international student, actually, so that was great too. I mean, we
They
went
make more
from,
than council. They're interns and they make more than council. Twice as much.
well, they're probably putting in more hours, but I'm not sure.
It depends.
Yeah, it depends on some weeks, but, I think it's good to pay the interns.
Yeah.
Yes.
But if they can at least get 3 credits out of it, that's a big expense too.
Yep.
So,
Because even if you get them with credit, you can pay them a stipend, you might get 2.
yeah.
All right. I'd love to keep the votes moving. Do we have much more discussion on, so there's a proposal to cut that 15,000. There's a second. Is everybody ready to vote on that?
Conversation,
Okay.
if we can amend it to an internship, I would ask Ms. Faulkner if she would reverse her line item cut.
I think I refuse at this point to do that. I think that would be a further conversation with the director, with Eunice. She was okay with the cut. If that is something they want to propose in 2024 and formalize an internship program, I think that's something to look at. But at this point, I stand by the original motion.
Yeah. All right. Let's vote
A
on it.
motion on the floor to eliminate $15,000 from casual labor from page 29 in the HR Office of Personnel to 0. Motion by Councilmember Faulkner, seconded by Ms. Flores. Voting on the resolution, Councilmember Krasinski,
Yes.
Faulkner,
Yes.
Flores.
Yes.
Keys,
No.
True,
Yes.
Witherspoon,
No.
President Nelson.
Yes.
Motion passes, yeas 5, nays 2.
All right.
Now, when your kids need a job in the summertime, Chuck, yours is closest to
This
college.
is not a seasonal summer job.
This
is not that.
I'm gonna send him on the garbage truck like Brzezinski was.
Yeah.
Buy him a lawnmower, let him cut grass. Pay him money
All right.
for education.
All right, I think that takes us back over your 500,000 threshold.
Sweet.
So
Sweet.
you're welcome.
All right. Do we have any other cuts?
I am not gonna fight the fee increases, but I want everybody to please explain to the general public why they're getting screwed over by it again. It's wrong. I will say it's wrong forever. I can show you where to get money, but that's not my job. I'm not gonna do that to administration. I just vehemently dislike that. And
I'd love to talk. I'd love to talk about the enterprise funds more. I mean, like, I think there's some discussion that we could have there. I'd love to get through the general fund first and then really get there. I think there's some conversation worth having. Do we have other stuff for the general funds that anyone's proposing?
I mean, I'm not gonna propose it right now, but I just wanna make a comment. I know that last year we had ended up making the communications department into its own separate department, and that was the first year that we introduced the communications director, and that's a $72,000 position, and that's currently being paid for with ARP funds.
No,
Right?
no, it's general funds.
Oh, it's general funds?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna be a long-term
Mhm.
position
No, it ain't.
until we can't afford it.
Right.
Same with immigration and refugee liaison, and then community affairs office.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those positions are going to probably be on the chopping block in the future if we do not find
It's
funds.
Christmas time, we're out, they'd be on a
Well,
block.
Those were
party.
positions before, though.
You said,
New American Liaison and the
yeah, but they
community
were
liaison.
under the mayor's administration. You guys moved those over to a separate department under Office of Communications.
Yeah, because they do
Okay.
outreach.
Do we have a communications department, President?
not by legislation. I'll suggest with the two empty positions right now, with the community affairs officer and the new American liaison both being at $45,000, their benefits being $24,048, I will suggest cutting one of those positions. Would anyone?
To get welcoming certified, you have to have a full-time New American Liaison. So
Well, then I'll suggest the community affairs officer.
you're gonna eliminate a community liaison?
I'll put it to a vote. I think at this
That's gonna
point we
cut out
have.
a whole bunch of outreach that we can do.
I think at this point, there's been a clear prioritization of adding more and more to the communication side and the outreach side, to the point that now we have 9 people doing what was in former administrations and in other cities at about 4 people. So,
How's that?
no. So the positions that were in existence in the mayor's office before
The New
Schember's
American
administration.
Liaison and the community liaison.
And then comparing that to other comparable cities, Altoona, Scranton, Allentown, Reading. We do have a more robust communications than any of the rest of them. With the outreach liaisons, we do have a much more robust system.
I'd have to look at their staffing
yeah.
to see, I
No,
mean, they could have different.
Well,
names.
we have a more robust system than the administration that you came in. Like you've added since we started in these areas.
We were looking at best practices to what they do in other communities to get resources and services out to residents.
Yeah.
And the need is for community outreach because people don't know about the resources that are available and they can't access them.
Yeah.
So, question was, you said we have to have a New American to be what?
Welcoming.
To be welcoming certified, that was something that we worked on in 2018 and 2019. And we were able to achieve it, but one of the requirements is that you have a full-time staffer who's working on immigrant and refugee relations.
Okay. And you also should be cognizant of whoever's making this proposal that, also that upwards of 1/3 of this city are Black and brown people. And to pick one or the other, I think is an injustice to both.
I mean, I would suggest making it a shared position, as both of them are vacant and have been for the last 6-7 months.
How long have they been posted online, though?
It's not posted right now. We're working on, we wanted to revise it to make sure that it clearly reflected the role that we wanted. And I have them, they're almost done. We were gonna post them this
just
week.
one.
I just think that, we have a pretty large city and we have a lot of people in need, a lot of really vulnerable populations. And I agree with Councilman Keyes. I would hate to cut out a whole segment of the population from having that opportunity to access resources.
Yeah, I agree with that. These are critical roles. I think it is a bit tragic that they've been vacant for over half the year, and that's something we need to absolutely prioritize. But folks are already having a difficult time accessing information and government services, and so cutting that, I can't get behind.
Any more discussion?
Call for the question.
I'll call for the vote. I'm the first. Do I have a second?
Yeah.
Brzezinski's a second.
I'm not really sure what line item or page that was.
That is page 21, and we'll say the community affairs officer, but it really just leaves so that there's two positions that are the same and gives the administration room to fill one of them.
Yeah.
So are we going line by line doing this, communication, or?
Yeah, we could go line through anywhere you
just
see cuts.
because-
You could recommend
We
it.
voted on this first, though?
Yeah,
Finish this one off.
All right.
Yeah.
were we,
So we have a vote. We have a first, a second. Call for the vote.
okay, what are we voting on?
Can I?
One of the communications positions for community liaison. So we have an immigration and we have a community affairs officer. We have two positions doing this. They've both been vacant for a significant amount of time. We've added additional resources for communications manager, social media. The general office has grown, and this would be reining it back in.
I would love to see an officer hired to deal with the people who are there, paying their taxes, doing their things, and barely making it every month. People who
Right,
need
so
help fixing
I
their
think-
house up and don't know how to do it.
Renee, you had something you'd like to say?
I'm just
Sorry.
wondering, I mean, are you just trying to cut another $65,000, or you're actually, because I mean, we can.
Yeah, that's 80,000.
We can work on looking for other cuts tomorrow, but I think cutting community outreach would really hurt residents.
Agreed. And I think well, the target populations, like what you're saying, Ed, agreed. Like, we need to focus on folks who are low income, who are struggling. And I think these two roles capture that in a lot of ways. It's our immigrants and our refugees, our new Americans, and then also generally community affairs. The last person in that role really built strong ties, especially with our Black and brown community members. And so I think instead of it saying low income tax paying liaison, in a lot of ways, these two roles are essentially doing that.
At the end of the day, 90% of our budget's personnel. So
Right.
those are the areas that we're going to have to rein in at some point. Taking vacant positions in offices that have grown a lot in the last 6 years, I think would be the most prudent way to try to rein in any expenses.
There's only been one position added there, though. I don't know what you mean by grown a lot.
6 years ago, there was 4 people between the mayor's office, and now there's, what are we at, 9 or 10? 10, thank you. Between the mayor's office and now communications office. The mayor's office grew enough where it then split into 2 offices. So we went from 4 to now it's grown up to 10 and split and multiplied. That's where we're at. So I'm looking to rein that back in a little bit.
But we had are you counting IT and print shop and all
No,
those?
those are in the finance administration. That's,
Okay, I don't.
Both of these roles, person the same thing, what's the difference between the 2 roles?
They liaise with different members in the community to get staff, the staff get services, resources out. They're gonna be working with Love Your Block on reaching more residents to provide resources, helping with applications for resources from the Redevelopment Authority for housing rehab. We have, when we put on Celebrate Erie, we want to make sure that we have diverse vendors, musicians, and a good way to do that is to have our community liaisons doing outreach to help us get more involvement that way. There are so many ways that those community liaisons can help with getting information out. We've put ARP funding into economic and community development programs so that city residents have access to free training, free resources, free services, but a lot of them don't know about it. So we want to be able to hold forums. We want to help people access those resources. And without people to do that, it's impossible.
who's been doing it for the
situation.
last 7 months that these positions have been empty?
It hasn't been done. And that's the whole point.
So-
Adding
It's
people that will make it happen.
This positions sound markedly different than the positions that the last people held. And so if you could kind of go on that or explain how this has evolved?
I think that, you know, they were doing some of that. A lot of that was being shared through the groups that they were running. The one has the New American Council. There's also the Strengthening Police Communications Council, the Historically Black Affiliated Council. They would share information to those groups, and those groups would share information out, which is one way to get information out. But we also want to be a little bit more proactive to make sure that we're doing that grassroots outreach and getting the word out to residents about the resources that are available, actually helping them to apply, going door to door. We just think that that more intensive effort will help us to get resources in the hands of people who need it the most. And, you know, from our involvement with Bloomberg Philanthropies over the past year, we were looking at success stories and best practices in other communities. And there are communities that have whole offices of civic engagement with staff of 6 people that go door to door regularly to let people know about services and resources and to help them with stuff like this. And we didn't have anything like that. So we just really need, you know, as we've been here from year to year, we see what the needs are. We learn more every year, and we're trying to improve on what we've done so far.
So first of all, I would like to say that, you know, the mayor has made an effort in order to engage the population. And so I'm happy to see that there is a switch or a change into what the job will be. But you know, everything's from the top down. You know, we have departments that definitely could use a communications department. If we're gonna have a full-time, I was just talking to somebody the other day, if we're like gonna have a full-time communications director, you know, our certain department heads and stuff, which should be all being deferred to the communications director. I don't think our communications director just handling the administration's communication is a full, well-rounded job. You know, our police could use a spokesperson. Usually our police chief isn't out there making statements for obvious reasons. For that matter, if there's something with the fire department or whatever. And so I think that yes, communications is key, and 2, we need more of it. But 3, you know, we need to find a way to expand the communications we're doing and get more mileage out of the people that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're correct. The communications does work with all the other departments as well. When there's an issue that comes up, it's kind of all hands on deck. We all work together as a team on the messaging and making sure that we get out the appropriate information to the residents. So, you know, it's just, it takes time to fill positions and onboard people, and then, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out and you have to start over again. It's just kind of a current reality right now, but we're moving as fast as we can.
Well, I think that, was that fruitful enough discussion? We'll see where the vote lies.
Yeah.
You know, so I made the motion to cut one of those 2 positions from the Office of Communications. I don't care which title it is, to be honest. So one of those $45,000 positions, the benefits on it add up to another $24,048. The total cut would be $79,048 from the communications office. All right. I'm the primary. Brzezinski's the second. Call for the vote.
Could you just give me the total amount again?
$79,048. So yes would be to make the cut, and we would need 4 yes votes to have that cut occur.
Renee, can you get us copies of those descriptions for both jobs? The new descriptions, please?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, a motion by Council President Nelson, seconded by Council Member Brzezinski, that page 21 in the Office of Communications, the Communications Affairs Officer position be eliminated. totaling the amount of $79,048. Mr. Buzinski,
Yes.
Faulkner,
No.
Flores,
No.
Keys,
No.
Truitt,
No.
Witherspoon,
No.
Nelson.
Yes. All right.
Motion fails to pass, yeas 2, nays 5.
Please do those repeats.
Yeah, all of us, please.
All right. Do we have any other cuts from the
Sure.
general fund? Yes.
That 100,000 for the housing study,
Yes.
you were right.
Thank
It
you.
was in the general government budget.
Thank you.
Can we amend that?
Yes.
What page?
I had page 22.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's wrong.
Page 69, did you say? 60.
You know, I deleted my note after I was told that I was wrong.
So what is that,
I think it's
120,000 that we get cut?
It's match for grants, different other grants that we're getting.
I thought
That-
it was on page 62 and.
Yeah, it
Professional
is.
services?
Yes,
In what, in the general government?
general government, yes.
So do we have to back out the 120 that we already, or the 60 that we already took out of the other line?
Just move it to,
Just
just
amend it.
change the
Change it to
number.
page 62.
Just change the number.
Yes, still 4041, but page 62, general government.
Okay, that would be a motion by Ms. Faulkner, seconded by President Nelson, to amend the general government line item from page 22 to 62.
Yep.
It's still in the amount of $7,000.
I thought that was 50.
A reduction of 50.
50,000.
Yeah.
Actually, 50.
Yeah, she wanted to leave
From
70,000.
127 to a reduction.
So now it's just a reduction of 50 from an amount of,
Different line.
yeah, the current budget amount is $1,229,500, and that'll drop by 50,000. So $1,179,500.
Voting on the amendment, Councilmember Brzezinski, Faulkner,
Yes.
Flores.
Yes.
Keys,
Yes.
Troop, Witherspoon, President Nelson.
Yes.
Yeas 7, nays 0, and
At least it was still general funds.
Is there any other cuts that anyone's proposing? I do want to say we talked to the solicitor, Jasmine and I, this past Wednesday, and we had a conversation about the raises that occur mid-year. You know, the most recent changes of status. You know, there's the different automatic spots that go up, and then, you know, so there's. So I appreciate that we voted on Lisa's and that wrap up, because the changes that have been happening mid-year, I think leave a lot of animosity with some of the staff. I mean, that's where we're hearing that complaint from, and it takes council out of that process. So I'm not going to propose any other changes to any of that, but there's some, by ordinance, not directors, there's some spots that have, I think, escalated, and that's particularly the personnel office that have escalated up to director level pays where the ordinances don't reflect that. And I'd like to see that shift back towards reflecting the ordinances moving forward. Do you understand what I'm saying on that? I'm not trying to be condescending on that, but okay. So the ordinances, the whole administrative code. It's 114, 115, 117. It lays out the organization chart for the city. It determines what are departments, what are not departments, what are offices, what are bureaus, what are directors, what are assistant directors and managers. That's not currently reflected in a couple of our practices. It's not reflected in a couple pages of our budget. I would like to see that reflected until council changes any ordinances, and that's what we talked about last time is, well, then we should change the ordinance. Well, then we should change the ordinance, but that's still a vote until the practices should change after the ordinances change. And some of that's not reflected in the budget. I would like to see those numbers get reined in the future. Maybe some of these raises that have happened and Specifically, I'm talking about, a 13% increase in a position, whereas other comparable middle management type level positions have seen much lower raises than that. I would just like to see those raises maybe not continue until that director position that's not a director by ordinance gets caught up to by our deputy solicitor, until it gets caught up to by our chief IT, until it gets caught up to all of the other positions.
My understanding is that the mayor has some authority to decide who's in his cabinet and how those people are paid. But I can talk to the solicitor about what he perceives.
The cabinet ones, that's why we adjusted the, that's set by ordinance too. Because that's why we adjusted the police chief one, because the cabinet has a director of public safety. And then in the absence of that, then the mayor steps down into that role. But we changed that back in June so that the police chief and fire chief of those bureaus stepped up into that role.
Right.
That's set by ordinance as well. And this is
But not everything's in the ordinance. Not every position's in the ordinance.
correct. The directors, offices, those things are, and there's some spots that are, we made a computer office and we put it in the mayor's office. And I read the ordinance from the 1980s because we used to contract that out. And so we put it into the mayor's office and then we shifted it over to finance and administration. And we left it's redundant. We have it still in the mayor's office and in finance and administration.
Okay.
It's a quirky little redundancy. I should fix that. I fixed a lot of stuff this year. I didn't fix that one yet.
I mean, there are certain things that may be in an ordinance that don't reflect the way we're operating because it doesn't make sense anymore. So I guess I would just ask you to take that into consideration. Things change, needs change.
I would like to make those changes before the practice changes. Because this whole thing with the charter, chapter 411, 417, 418 in the budget, 411 is the mayor's responsibilities. The responsibility is to execute the charter and ordinances of the city. If the organization of the city is set by ordinance, that's supposed to be executed. If it's not being executed and it's being changed in a way, that's fine, let us know. We'll discuss and vote on it, as we did with the police chief and fire chief issue. There was other stuff in that ordinance that we struck out and decided not to move forward with, but it's still being moved forward with. That's an issue. And I like it reflected in the budget moving forward with some of these spots. I'm not going to sit here and I have the numbers as to what I would suggest as far as not giving raises or not giving 2.5% until it catches up. But I'm not going to do that this year. I would like to see that get reined in moving forward. Does that make it clear? And that's just mine. I mean, I'm not putting it up to a vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have a question. So, certain positions are set by ordinance and some certain are also set by the administration, of course, voted on by council. So, with all things being equal, do you think it's prudent that we, while we don't have complete control of it, set a set wage for a director or for, you know what I mean, or for an assistant director, and put them all at the same wage? Obviously, not reducing anybody's wages, but in a staggered way to make it like in the future where if I'm an assistant director at the city, I make so much money, even if I'm in this department or that department or the next department.
I mean, you bring a good point. It's something that we've been, considering for the last several years because, it's really difficult, when you take into account how long somebody's been in a position, their qualifications, their experience, how many people they manage, how many unions they manage, how many different enterprise funds or bureaus they manage, and how do you account for all that? And the city's never, to my knowledge, had a comprehensive pay scale analysis done. And that was a recommendation that came out of both the SCP, Strategic Consulting Partners DEI report, and also Jim Fiorenzo's recommendations when he did an HR audit, is that we don't have pay scales, we don't have, for the non-bargaining and management positions. And so it's really difficult when a position comes open to figure out what that salary should be, but also how comparable we are to other municipalities our size. And so in the near future, I'm hoping that we can get that analysis done, and I think that will help greatly with setting up those pay scales so we can figure out what's equitable.
Are we talking time studies?
No, not as much time studies. Well, I mean, it's more responsibilities, qualifications, comparability to other cities our size for the same sorts of responsibilities.
He's gonna keep you up all night.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Good? Yeah, that's
So
great.
hopefully these studies help
Thank you, sir.
It would,
give us a baseline analysis
Yeah.
on where we should be.
it's
compared to
sometimes we
other
feel like
places.
we're flying blind, you know? And then what do you do if somebody goes and gets an additional certification or a master's degree? Like, we need to have those steps, those policies and procedures in place so that it's just, we alert you, so-and-so earned a master's degree or so-and-so got their certification, they're gonna be bumped up. We want to make sure you knew that, but it's just,
Yeah.
I think
They did that
we'll
originally in
improve.
education because educators were paid very poorly. Today, it's not that way anymore, but yeah, you should get awarded. That's why I mentioned about the police department getting mental health training.
Yes,
Get that certificate. I'd give them extra money for that. If they're in a car and they have that ability to be a mental health specialist
Right.
as well as a policeman, that's
Yeah.
big.
All right. Is there anything else from the general funds? Enterprise funds, do you have any suggestion anywhere that you're looking that you think
I
there's-
just get people mad, you know me.
I like
I
your
know where the
honesty.
money is, take the money out of the risk management fund and let my poor people get a fee increase that's not there this year, that's all. But I'm not gonna fight the world, I'll take it on the forehead if my people tell me I'm a failure. But I did stop Green Garden for at least a couple of months.
Spring.
I want to answer a little bit. So, when we do a property tax increase, it affects only the property owners, right? The residents.
Right.
So, we've been able to hold the current millage for 5 years straight now. But as expenses go up in refuse and sewer, we need those enterprise funds to be self-sustaining. The city residents, if they subsidize that, if we were to make cuts in the general fund to cover the fees, okay? So we have about 34,000 residents that are paying property taxes. But in, say for instance, the sewer fund, it's a fee that's associated with usage. So we have businesses, commercial, industrial, nonprofits, a lot of different people pay that increased sewer rate. So if we make cuts in the general fund to subsidize that increased fee, that means the city residents are shouldering the entire burden instead of spreading it out. Instead of spreading it out
The poorest
over,
people are getting the biggest shot in the side of the head.
but it's less for them to do it this way than to increase taxes and then subsidize those enterprise
I'm gonna
funds.
hold you to that tomorrow, you can say that
I
again so
promise.
everybody will hear it.
I'll tell you, I do, with that in mind, because I see
I
what
know
you're,
what you're saying.
I see what you're doing there, is that the nonprofits are not, the tax exempt entities are not fee exempt.
Right.
But garbage is a spot where the tax exempt organizations aren't getting refuse.
Right.
So we've always done that, there was always that transfer. And when the transfer came out of sewer, I didn't really mind it. I understood what that was doing, and I didn't mind it. But the one that came out of refuse, so I appreciate that last year it was cut out of refuse and it was left in sewer. And I was like, oh, I kind of like what you're doing there. In future budgets and stuff, like helping refuse is really the spot. And even if there was, you were saying this is why we don't transfer into enterprise funds. On refuse, that would be the opposite. It would be just directly to residents.
It would be.
I'm not
Right.
sure how that gets legally justified. We might run into some
It's-
issues doing it that way.
Because if we continue to subsidize that and we're not covering our costs,
Yeah.
we're gonna run into problems down the road.
Yeah. But I wouldn't even mind an ongoing annual transfer from operating expense into refuse, because that's just hitting residents. As you were describing the difference with sewer, it's the opposite with refuse. But
So
go ahead, yeah,
you're probably gonna hate this job.
go for it, man.
So, with that in mind, we could go with a budget wash and offset the refuse fees. How much would that change or would that mitigate the change in the fee?
Only 700 grand.
It's 700,000. We can't stretch that as a transfer. And then it would just be a matter if that was an ongoing thing. Because the thing is, if you make that kind of shift, I would want to see it happen every year.
And at some point, you'd have to start increasing property taxes to cover the refuse bill.
And we're not-
Nonprofits don't pay property tax, but they pay fees, which is why we're trying to go this fee route, so that everybody's paying their fair share.
But
Right,
that's
they
why I'm
don't
specifically
pay
mentioning,
refuse either. They just pay sewer and stormwater.
Why do they not pay refuse?
because they don't get garbage.
Refuse is residential
It's just
only.
residential. So commercial
You have to pay.
so commercial taxes would go to offset residents on refuse. See how that would be? It would be a way of,
Okay.
I don't, if it was an ongoing transfer, I wouldn't mind that transfer going the reverse way as to what we have been doing. But for refuse, I feel a little, I'm not sure about saying this on live stream though. Maybe I should just shut up and wait till we're before I get some commercial properties coming in. Yeah, I'm gonna
It's
shut
just
up.
a question thrown out there, and I understand that it's something that cannot be ongoing. So,
I think what we were looking at is the more that we could save this year from the general fund, the more we could bank for next year to help with the structural deficit.
Yeah.
And we've been combating that every year since 2018, and we're making progress, but it takes time. You can't make it all up in 1 or 2 or 3 years.
We've got 1.1 million left to subsidize next year with,
Yeah.
out of that prepayment of the water lease.
Well, now we should be up to about 1.8 though.
Yes.
Right. So that's still not enough to cover
Yeah.
2025.
$6 million that we're behind.
I almost forgot a big thing. What Emergicare? With all the stuff we're talking about now, do we have? If it's not in general funds, you talked about with the airplane thing that you think you have some money in a different fund to
Yes.
help airplane. Do we have anything to help Emergicare right now? And
I
I'm remembering back to the CBDG.
We have CDBG open right now. I had talked to them about that in the past. And
Yeah, they
were
did that
gonna
last year.
apply.
They did the presentation. They brought
Yeah,
the stuff
yes,
up. They asked for
yes.
like 300,000 for new
Yes.
stretchers or something like that.
Yeah. So
Is there anything?
that's an option. I know that the city's characterized as being free riders. But as you can all see from the budget sessions we just went through, we spend a lot of money on emergency response. And, you're on our calls on Tuesday mornings. The vast majority of calls that fire go on are EMS calls. And so, while we're not directly funding Emergicare, we're spending a lot of city funding on emergency response. And I just think we're gonna need more time to think through how we can help to support them. But CDBG applications are open, and that's definitely an avenue.
Okay, last year they were specifically told no to CBDG. I mean, I was in the meeting and it was a mismatch. I remember the presentation
For
and
what
with
they
their
were applying for.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think there's room there this year?
I think for different application.
Okay, I would love. I think we've been seeing the need and we've been well informed on the need to make that a big priority. If we can't do it, if we're not doing it in general fund, I really want to make sure that it's addressed
Yeah.
somewhere.
It's on our minds too.
What's the due date for CDBG this year?
It is, I want to say January 30th, or it's the end of the month, maybe the last Friday of the month.
Considering I'll have a little bit of extra time in January, if me and Dave want to sit down, I've gone through that process of applying for CDBG. I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
What do they need help in?
So the presentation they gave to our CBDG when they brought in their stretchers, which they've been cannibalizing them. So for everything you're worried about with public safety and the most likely way of If you dying probably isn't a cop, it's, or, you know, like probably a heart attack at this stage, right? I mean, and the same thing for me. I mean, like, statistically, most likely way for me to die is an accident. And, you know, that's the stuff EMS is responding to. Their chairs are like 34th. I'm ballparking the numbers. So if I'm being recorded right now and I realize I'm going to get my numbers wrong, but I think the lifts were like 34,000. I remember them being like a pretty decent car. But for them to lift all this stuff up and to lift the people up and to make sure that they've been cannibalizing those to the point that they no longer can get the parts because they're so old. And they've been cannibalizing the broken chairs to make sure that they can get the parts, leaving them with very few resources on that. So they came and gave a CBDG, and I think they had asked for like $300,000 to replace their lifts. And I'm not using the right word. The chairs, the stretchers. Yeah. They don't get the resources. You know, they're Medicare, Medicaid. We're, you know, a low-funded community. We don't have Cadillac coverage insurance for most of our residents. So they continue to run at this deficit, this struggle. And they continue to provide ALS services, advanced life-saving rather than basic life-saving, for the whole region, because that's just how the system works. So every time someone has a heart attack in Northeast, it's Erie guys going out there. And then the Harbor Creek people complain that they come here for a stubbed toe because we're busy out there with heart attacks. So
why don't the county step up? They're fighting over a library.
They've been trying to figure that out.
But there's some steps. I mean, in West County, they're working together with like 5 or 6 municipalities are now joining together so they can provide ALS.
Something the COG was supposed to do 1,000 years ago.
They're working on it.
They are working on it.
But we still don't have the best equipment for our ambulances. They asked us for $300,000. CBDG wasn't the right thing. I'm not saying the general funds are, but I'd love to find them money to an extent, because we haven't given them money for anything for a long time, is the way it looks. And I'm way more likely to need them to keep me alive than anything else in this town.
So,
Are you a member?
About grants, yeah.
That's one way to go.
Yeah.
Look into possible grants for them that we can't
Just
use.
wrote that down.
Does that,
Yeah,
A possibility?
I just
Yeah, we can
wrote
do
that
that.
down.
yeah.
yeah.
We're gonna check with them.
But if we don't have anything, if we don't have anything by them for next year, I would love to see it in the budget. I mean, I think that's something that, you know, we're spending $70 million on public safety, and I can't think of the most, you know, I've called the police 2 or 3 times in my years of living here. I haven't called fire yet. I've called off fire because they showed up at my church when I overcooked something. But ambulances, I've had to call them a couple times. Not for me, but for stuff.
I gotta play devil's advocate, but I'd like to make a cut. I want to cut the garbage fee.
Okay. Where would you like to see the cut?
Take it out of risk management if you want to. They got at least $1 million sitting there. We only need 700,000.
I'd rather see come out of operating in the cuts that we just
I don't
made.
care where you find it. I just want to throw a bone to the people is what I'm saying. If it's the garbage thing.
It'd be a tax raise next year.
Hmm?
It'd be a tax raise next year.
Not if we make, with that cut, we put the money in that fund just like they paid it. But instead of the people paying it,
But it's not sustainable because it won't be there next year. So then you still have to replace that next year.
Right.
Plus, we won't
hopefully
have,
by then we'll have more glass being taken out and our tonnage will be lower.
I would like to
I'm
see
just trying
that.
to help, hold
I
me
take
down,
mine.
but I'm going down with it.
So,
If I can get a second.
Let's just narrow it in for exactly what you'd vote for. Let's take $250,000 from general funds to transfer it into refuse. Does that sound like a reasonable thing for a motion?
As long as I can get
And
that
how-
thing cut.
how
Does
much
that
would
cover it?
offset?
Right.
That wouldn't offset the whole.
It wouldn't offset the whole thing. It would it brings down to a 4% increase instead of a 6%.
If we have to raise it, we have to
What
raise
did
it.
you do with the money that you took away from the police? What's that doing?
No, that's literally what I'm talking about doing.
Okay.
So literally, we could take the police overtime, 250. It's 280 if you want to do that, and put it
We
towards
can
the
piece
refuse.
it together and, just throw them a bone. It's Christmas, for Christ's sakes. It's not a huge thing, but it's still,
So,
the people, again, we're worried about new positions so we can help the new Americans come in here, which is a wonderful thing. But let's not forget the Americans that we have here. I'm not gonna mention any names. We had a long-time council person here that tried to get his house fixed. And when he saw the 15-page thing that he had to fill out, he said, I ain't doing this.
Yeah.
So, you know, we need somebody out there helping our everyday people who built this city. That's,
So,
All
All
right.
right, so just to narrow it in, $250,000 transfer from operating into refuse. Does that sound like a reasonable thing for a bone to throw?
go ahead.
Does that sound like a
It's 250, right?
250,000? That would make the increase instead of 6% about 4%. And I'm sure Lisa can finalize those numbers tomorrow if that was a thing.
so
Instead of 287, that would put him at about 282.
Take 500 grand from that risk management, then there's your
Yeah.
7.
But that's a one-time revenue source. I get a little nervous
I'm
about
gonna
that.
say, in certain way, you know, ultimately raising the fee protects the people you're talking about, because most of them are homeowners, and one thing we haven't had to do is raise the tax rate. And if you see what we're getting at the county and what we're getting at the school district, we just can't be everything. You know, and so I'm proud that we've held the line on property taxes.
So,
The other two are actually fee-based services, and nobody runs a business at a deficit and keeps a business.
so,
It's just,
Unrealistic.
so the proposal that I'm trying to narrow in on you, that would be increasing a line item in the budget. So that would take a supermajority. It would be a $250,000 transfer from operating into refuse.
Now, if we do that, we have to put that 250,000 back next year plus an additional $3.40 per quarter per household. So
So that's gonna be a
Okay.
bigger
so it's
shock
going to
on
be a
folks.
bigger increase next year.
Yeah, for a $5
So we-
difference.
Save it, yeah.
All right, unless we keep making that transfer every year. That would be the other spot. And then there would be a tax increase.
deficit.
Then we're, looking at a property tax
We'll
increase.
get that anyway with
Is-
6 million in the hole next year.
Does that sound like how you would like it? Is that a
I'd
reasonable
like to
way?
help the people one way or another.
All right. Is there any other discussion? Okay, it would take 5 votes because it would increase a line item in the general. Can I call for the vote? Oh, sorry, I'm the second on Ed's.
Okay, so we're taking a motion by Councilmember Brzezinski, seconded by Councilmember Nelson, to take $250,000 from the operating general fund budget and transfer it to refuse.
So that would be an operating transfer from the general fund, and it
To
would be
refuse. Yeah.
the same in refuse.
All right. All right.
Calling for the vote, Mr. Brzezinski.
Yes?
Faulkner.
No,
Flores.
No.
Keys.
No.
Troop.
No.
Witherspoon.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes, motion fails.
You people have to run again. I don't. Remember that.
That's in 2 years.
All right.
Remember
$5
that.
per
All right.
household.
Any other things to talk about? All right, I'll make a motion to adjourn then.
Okay,
Is that how we do that?
second.
Because we done, right?
Yeah.
One more, one more thing. I guess it's, I guess I'm a little late on this, but for people that, you know, we have a lot of vehicles we put in the budget that were pending grants. And so I'm asking you, don't authorize money to be spent on vehicles until we know whether we're gonna get grants or not. And that will be several $100,000 we can back out at the end of next year if we actually get those grants, and make sure that we capture that money and move it.
Well, that will be in the capital budget, and that money will still be in the capital budget at the end of the year for next year's budget, so we can reallocate it.
Okay, that's all. On you, Chuck.
All right, meeting adjourned?
Yep. I second the motion.